Look at the person next to you there and grin real big. It is a good day to be in the house of the Lord, is it not? A community had several churches who shared a common problem. They had a problem with squirrels getting in their churches and creating messes and scrambling around in the ceilings, interrupting services. Well, the Baptist church, they decided to set up a slide in the baptistry. You know how squirrels like a slide. They figured once they slid down into the baptistry, they would drown there. But they failed to realize that squirrels naturally knew how to swim, and they had so much fun, they invited their friends, and they had more squirrels afterward than before the slide had been set up. The Episcopalians, they didn't want to harm the squirrels. They set out humane traps and trapped the squirrels and turned them loose near the Baptist church. But this was a short-lived victory, since when the Baptists took out their water slide, the squirrels returned to the Episcopal church with more. The Lutherans, they decided to set out pails of whiskey to poison the squirrels, only to find out how much damage a drunken group of squirrels can actually do to a church. The Methodists decided to baptize the squirrels, bring them into membership, and assign them to committees. And nobody's seen them since. That one's for you, Max. It takes faith to keep looking up as we face the trials, and we might say, oh, the best laid plans of mice and men, or squirrels and men. We face troubles and trials throughout life, don't we? There seems to always be one more around the corner. It happens to the best of us. And the old hymn says it well. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well. It is well with my soul. And you might be here this morning facing storms. You might be getting through a storm. And this morning we're looking to Mark chapter 4 at verse 35, if you'd like to turn there with me. Lindsay has already got us well on the way with this verse of Scripture. Mark chapter 4, verse number 35. It says, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified. They asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Well, the geographic location of the Sea of Galilee makes it real susceptible to sudden and violent storms. And the storm mentioned here drove the waves into the boat so that it was being swamped. We're talking about a real storm on a sea, and when they say Sea of Galilee, it truly is a sea. It is a big body of water, and nobody knew the dangers of this place more than these fishermen. They made their living out here, and if the Bible says they were terrified, I don't think that's an understatement. They knew the risk they were facing. No exaggeration. Whose idea was it to go to the other side? Do you recall? It was Jesus' idea, wasn't it? It was Jesus' idea. Did you notice the immediacy? Scripture tells us that Jesus, leaving the crowd behind, took him along just as he was in the boat. Took Jesus along just as he was in the boat. No time to do anything. No time to get supplies. No time to say bye. No time for whatever one might need time for. They left immediately. Immediately. Jesus was in control from the very beginning. And he's in control of your life as well. I hope you realize that. If you think about it from the 5,000-foot view, and this would mean looking at our passage in relation to what follows and what comes before, the first person they meet when they get to the other side is a man that's been wandering around the tombs, demon-possessed, howling, and can't be bound in chains. The people aren't going to be real happy with them showing up there either. If you'll recall, they drive the demons out of him into a herd of pigs. The pigs go into the sea. The people make their living from the pigs, it would seem, and they ask them to leave immediately. Yeah, this is more than just a storm on the sea. They're going into a storm. Into a real storm. You know, and when I saw the demon-possessed man coming down to the shoreline to meet us, I probably wouldn't have been there for long. I'd have been the second person that ever walked on water. Because I'd have been getting out of there. How about you? It's a spooky, spooky situation. It is a storm in and of itself. And Jesus doesn't give them time to sit around and think about it very much. You know, if you sit around and think about something long enough, you can come up with so many excellent excuses why you shouldn't go. He doesn't allow them to think about it. And if we look closely, that's what we see afterward. If we look before this event, Jesus has been talking to them about evangelism. Okay? He's been talking to them in parables about a sower of seeds, about putting a lamp on a lampstand, parable of growing a garden, a mustard seed. All these are about sharing the gospel. And he's about to teach them something about fear in the midst of sharing the gospel. Sometimes Jesus simply says, let's go. Let's go. And we better go. I don't know if I ever told you about my old buddy Craig. He was my Sunday school superintendent in my first church. And Craig had learned to play the bass. And I played guitar. You know how it is when you're kind of new on an instrument. It's a little bit scary to get up and play it in front of people. So we practiced Wayfaring Stranger. And Craig was an old country boy. He had all these sayings. If he was excited, he'd say, I had the fish eye. Yeah, we can picture that. Or if he's upset, I was broke down like a shotgun. Something scared him, my spirit like it left my body. But anyway, we practiced on this song over and over. And the Sunday we did it, I didn't tell Craig was going to do it. I knew his bass was up here plugged in and into it and everything, you know. So during the middle of the service, I said, me and Craig are going to play Wayfaring Stranger for you. Come on up, Craig. And I heard this noise. It went, oh! Oh! I never will forget that. But Craig made it on up and we played through the song. Didn't miss a note. But I knew Craig well enough to know, had I told him in advance, he would have worried himself sick. That's the way it was. Now, you know, as he got better and better, he wouldn't have dealt with that. But as things were, that was the right choice. And so it is here. Jesus says, let's go. Don't sit around and think about this any. Let's go. And sometimes Jesus calls us like that. He calls us just the same. It's imperative that we listen to God. Sometimes He leads us to places we wouldn't go otherwise, you know? It's imperative that we listen to God. Sometimes there are storms that God will lead us to avoid. You think about Paul. Remember, John Mark chickened out on Paul and Barnabas. When they got to a region, John Mark was smart enough to put things together and determine these people are going to kill us because he's going to say just exactly what I think he's about to say to them. You know? When you look at Paul, you see this person who seems to be beyond fear of any type or any sort. He has such a zeal. And John Mark was smart enough to realize he's going to get us killed out here and left. And Paul's not going to take him on any more missionary journeys. But Barnabas steps in, you know, and takes young John Mark under his wing. And him and Paul have a bit of a fuss over this situation. We need a lot of Barnabases in the church, you know it? A lot of Barnabases in the church. But as far as Paul is concerned, you'd think he'd just walk into a hurricane. You'd think he'd hunt for him, you know? But that's not so. There was a time when Paul snuck out of a city, hid in a basket, because he knew they were going to kill him. Okay? Then on another occasion, he decides he's appealing to Caesar to go to Rome, even though he knows pretty well he's going to die there. When he could have just walked away had he not appealed to Rome. But he needed to get to Rome. Do you see this? It's like on this occasion, he needs to use every trick in the book to get away from the storm. On this occasion, he needs to do everything he can do to get to the storm that's going to take his life. And so it is with Jesus. As he announced we're headed to Jerusalem, he knew he'd be crucified there. He told them as much. But we have to listen to God. We have to listen to God in the midst of everything. I had a New Testament professor one time said, there is a difference between being a martyr and a mule. There is a difference. You know how stubborn an old mule is. Any of y'all ever plowed with a mule before? They're just not the friendliest critter. I bet you Dr. Phil over here can tell us a little bit about these critters.
One or two stories.
But we're not to go out here to create a mess, to create our own storm. We're to listen to Jesus. We're to listen to Jesus. You know, in life there are times when we should avoid a storm, even when the purpose might seem noble. There are other times we should not. Listening to God is the key here. There are storms that we bring upon ourselves. Have you ever been in the middle of the lake with your boat quickly filling up with water? I've done that. I see Brittany grinning over here. What do you do? Start bailing the water? Start bailing the water out? I bet you Captain Jimmy could probably tell us what you do. You put it in gear, don't you? You take off as hard as you can go and it'll drain the water back out. That's the key. If you panic though, and your boat's going to fill up and sink. The same with our walk with Christ. You know, we don't give up in panic, but we listen. We listen to the good Lord, and He'll lead us along the way if we will really, truly listen. He speaks to us each and every one. And even when we've made the mess ourselves. How many of you ever made your own mess that you're praying for the Lord to get you out of? We've all done it, haven't we? Oh, Lord, I'll never do this, that, or the other again. If you'll just get me out of this mess here. Making deals, maybe. So often He calls us to do something. As we serve, things go differently, though. There was a Dr. Lambie, he's a missionary to Abyssinia. That was a place that's in modern-day Ethiopia. And they had to ford many rivers. He used it as an illustration. There was one swift river that he knew was going to take their lives trying to cross it. If you got going across the river and it swept your feet out from under you, you were in trouble. There wasn't any getting out. But the key was keeping your feet planted to the floor of the river. And he watched some natives, how they went about it. And what they did was they picked up a heavy stone and held it up over their head and walked straight across the river with no trouble whatsoever. Because that weight they were carrying planted their feet into the bottom of the river so well that the water couldn't sweep them downstream. And so it is in life. Some of the stones we carry might look an awful lot like storms themselves, but they're there to save us rather than burden us along. Things we do for others will always come back to be a weapon in our armament. We get right in the middle of some storms that God didn't want us in, simply because we failed to listen. And sometimes there's just no rhyme or reason to the storms that come along. Maybe once we get to heaven one day we'll fully understand. But we'll all face those as well. But we are to listen to the good Lord in each and everything we do and to keep on. Might have told you about my great-grandma. She sent me a birthday card one year. She lived out in the country, had chickens. This particular great-grandma did. And just country as could be. And she sent me a birthday card one time with $5 in it. And it didn't even say happy birthday. All it said was keep on keeping on. And she probably did well to write that. But you know, I've remembered those words all these years. Had she written a little bit more, I probably wouldn't even remember the card or anything about it, would I? But those words I've held on to. Keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on. And I'd say hold on to the good Lord's hand while you do it. Because He will lead us along the way. We face the storms in life. Remember Forrest Gump? Oh, we all loved Forrest Gump, didn't we? What do you have? Shrimp cocktail, shrimp stew, shrimp creole, shrimp kebab, shrimp salad, shrimp soup. And you know, the way he had become successful was weathering the storm. Where everybody else hid, he rode straight into it. Him and Captain Dan, that was his name, wasn't it? What a scene. And what a message behind it. Because at the end, when all the other shrimp boats were wrecked upon the docks and the ground, his was the only one left. The only one left. So keep on keeping on. Ride the storm. We have a God who knows who controls the storms. We'll understand all things when we get to heaven one day, but in the meantime, we've got a God that loves us, who cares for us. Verse 37, a furious squall came up, the waves broke over the boat, and it was nearly swamped. And the disciples have looked at the situation. They know it's a matter of time before they're in a bad situation. And Jesus, it says, was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. And sometimes in life, the storms we face, we have to wonder, is He aware of it? I need to pray louder to make Him aware of it. Says He's asleep. Does He even care? You ever wonder if God even cares? That's what they ask Him. Do you care? Teacher, don't you care if we drown? And He cares more than you could ever imagine. 39, He got up and rebuked the wind, said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, it was completely calm. He said to His disciples, Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? He showed himself not only to be Lord over people, but over all creation. Even the wind and the waves obey this one. They still remember their Maker's voice. And sometimes God calms the storm. Sometimes He calms His child. You know? Whatever storm we might face, we've got to remember the one we follow is in control. He's not only the captain of our ship, but the captain of the sea. They were terrified, verse 41, and asked each other, "Who is this?" Even the wind and waves obey Him. What kind of storms are you facing in life? We're all facing some, aren't we? And there are days where we can kind of see the storm clouds on the horizon. Lindsay's right about how quickly a storm will come on you on the lake. Gosh, especially South Holston. You see it out there at the dam when you start your run for the dock. And it will get there before you get to the dock. You can just about count on that. We all face storms. We all face storms. Financial problems when bills seem like a never-ending flood. Health problems that hit like a hurricane. Family troubles that come like a tempest. Work environment like a tornado. Maybe you're even facing problems because of following Jesus. Revelation 1:17 says, "And when I saw Him, I fell at His feet as dead. And He said, He laid His right hand upon me, saying unto me, Fear not, I am the first and the last." Do you realize how often Jesus says, "Fear not"? I am the first and the last. I had a dream. I think that was Friday night. I dreamed I was going down a country road, and I was riding in the passenger seat, and my mom was driving. There's turns, and I got to noticing we were moving on to the point that the tires were squealing a little bit as we made some of those turns. And I saw one coming up, and I thought, we're not going to make this one. It's a big hairpin-like turn. So I grabbed the steering wheel and steered us around through it, and I got us through it around the turn, and I looked up to my mom, and she was like this, just totally out of it. And I knew it was her. She suffers from diabetes, and I knew something was wrong with her sugar levels, you know. And I dreamed I got us through a few more turns and got us out of the car, you know, laid her down. And the next day, it really, really shook me up. And the next day, I called her up. I want to know how she was doing. She said her blood sugar levels, it started last night. She'd been up all night. This morning they'd been 575 glucose level. And I ended up going up there. I don't think that she was going to go to the doctor. And I made her go. You know, she's trying to lower it on her own. They said, yeah, it's a good thing you came. You had, you know, ketones, and she's really just right at ketoacidosis, which, she had a kidney infection that was causing it. So she said, it's a good thing you came. I just think about that. Did the good Lord wake me up, showing me there was something I needed to do? Sounds that way, doesn't it? But there are always storms. There's some that He will bring us through, some He'll bring us around, some we need to just avoid altogether. Sometimes He gives us the abilities to do that. It is well, it is well. He does own the future too, you know. And as bad as any storm ever gets, He's still in control. And He still has a victory for each of us, even after we leave this world someday. Horatio Spafford, he faced the death of his son at age 2, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. He was ruined financially. He'd been very successful. He significantly invested in the property of Chicago and just been wiped out by the Chicago Fire. His business interests were further hit by the economic downturn of 1873, which time he had planned on traveling to Europe with his family, but he was stuck there in Chicago with some zoning laws that were needing to be worked on after the fire. He sent his family on ahead of him and received word back from his wife, saved alone. What had happened was, while crossing the Atlantic, the ship had sank after a collision with another boat called the Loch Earn, and all 4 of Spafford's daughters died. His wife Anna survived, thus the message, saved alone. And as he traveled across the sea to Europe, as he reached the place where the ship went down, he penned these words: "When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well. It is well with my soul."